Tim Sanders.
Well, thank you guys. It's really nice to meet all of you. I've met some of you already, and I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very grateful to Mark and Tim for bringing me out. I'm grateful that you guys have agreed to sit here for 2 hours for me to talk tonight on a busy night like this. This is crazy. I'm just kidding. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes, mostly about my grandmother, the subject of the book you have in front of you, Billie King Kaufman. Remarkable woman, remarkable family, and a remarkable story. She took me in underneath a water tower in Sudan, Texas when I was about 5 years old. This is the mid-60s. And she taught me a lot of things in life. I'm going to share just a few ideas with you. But she came from a family that actually prospered during the Great Depression. She was a senior in 1928 when the stock market crashed. Her dad, Tommy King, had the Midas touch as a farmer. He was the first farmer in the Southwest to use circular farming techniques. When the Dust Bowl came later on, he became a very wealthy person, literally the last person standing in the wheat industry there in that part of the country. But much like everybody else, the Great Depression had a real impact on our family. Because even though our family was able to do well in Clovis, New Mexico, everybody else was suffering. And one of the things she realized is that what Napoleon Hill in 1937 called the fear of poverty was very contagious. And that throughout my life, I'm always going to have a choice to make. And that's the scarcity mentality, not enough to go around, usually triggered by bad news, or this abundance mentality, that there's enough to go around, enough to share. And she realized that she was going to have to put me on the same plan her daddy put her on, this mind power, positive thinking plan, because in the second grade I was put in special education. Special education back in the 60s, early 70s wasn't very structured. You literally just were in a cubicle with the rest of the special ed kids. You were on a self-paced program. You literally didn't have teachers. You just studied. And I finished high school at the end of the 5th grade. And so they had to put me back into the general population as Short Bus Sanders, which is what I was known as at the church. And so she knew that in my life, it was going to be really hard for me to believe in myself, to fit in, and to excel. But she also knew from the 6 books besides the Bible in her library exactly what she should do. You see, there was a guy named James Allen in 1921 that wrote a book called As a Man Thinketh. And it had a lot to do with mind power and the thoughts that we put into our head. 1932, a YMCA instructor named Dale Carnegie published a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Napoleon Hill published a book in 1937 called Think and Grow Rich. 1942, Claude Bristol produced a magic book called The Magic of Believing. In 1961, a plastic surgeon named Dr. Maxwell Maltz published a very important book called Psycho-Cybernetics. Every one of these books makes an argument, and the argument is this. If you live your life correctly and you design your daily life positively, you will believe and you will have a confident outlook, and that the corrections in life, like the Great Depression and what we've just gone through in 2008, will actually be your opportunities. So she taught this to me. And between the 6th grade, when I went back into the general population, in my senior year, I practiced these 7 principles she taught me over and over again, based on these great works. And by my senior year, I was class president, we were state champions in debate, and I had a college scholarship, and I had my life back. And then, as I'll explain to you in a few minutes, I went sideways, because that's what happens to us in our life. Some type of adversity shows up. It could be a bankruptcy, it could be getting laid off, it could be a death in the family, and you literally get off the plan. And one of the things she taught me, and this is I call it a tweetable quote. She taught me that success is not a destination. She says, you'll never get there. It doesn't exist. It's not a place. She said, success is a direction, and that direction is forward. And she says, for people to move forward in their life and grow as human beings and make a deeper contribution and find more happiness each and every day, she says, the magic ingredient is confidence. The first time she explained it to me, she revved the car to kind of illustrate it for me. I was like 9 at the time. She said, confidence is rocket fuel. It will give you the calm, collected sense of purpose to take risks when everybody else is freezing. It'll give you a sense of clarity to be more creative and more effective in your life. It'll make you very persuasive to other people. And she says, but most of all, it'll make you a happy person. She says, because if you have a confident outlook, That means that you believe you will succeed and thrive in your circumstance. She said, you'll have the abundance mentality. You'll be the biggest dog. It won't bother you that somebody else has money. Won't impact you at all. You won't be jealous of other people's success. The kind of news that just really upsets people on television will seem to you more like a challenge than a crisis. She taught me, though, that confidence isn't just something you develop around self-image. She said that positive thinking is an outcome. That's what she learned growing up from her parents. It is the outcome of conscious lifestyle design. Now, we live in a culture today, I call it the secret world, where we think that positive thinking is a prescription, right? Somebody's got a bad attitude, they're afraid, what do? We say you need to just think positive. The 30s generation learned it's not that easy. It's really about a bunch of decisions you make every day, and I'll illustrate this. I mentioned that Tommy King had money, and he did. He was very successful as a farmer, had some real estate, had a successful gas station on Main Street. But by 1938, he began to catch this funk, this airborne disease called small pie. That's what they called it in the 30s. Small pie was a person's belief that the pie of life was limited, and that when somebody got a slice, they lost something. A lot of people caught this during the Great Depression. Many of us know relatives that to this day are still voracious coupon clippers and penny pinchers as a result of this psychological hangover. So Tommy King, even though he was still doing well, the conversation at dinner started to change. And over the course of about a year, all he talked about each and every day was who was going broke, who was shutting down the farm, who was losing their shirt, and when are we going to have this happen to us too? Billy's mother, Hattie King, picked up at the Five and Dime, now known as the 99-cent store, one of those green wicker basket Horn of Plenties. Now I'm here in the part of the country where certainly one of your parents or grandparents had this. It's the green wicker Horn of Plenty. It's got the rubber fruit inside it with those oblong grapes, little dust magnets, right? I mean, one of the jobs I had as a kid was dusting, and I hated that. I wanted to get rid of it. One day I said, why don't we get rid of this Horn of Plenty? Then she explained to me what happened. Hattie bought this in the late 1930s and sat it down on the table and just waited for her husband Tommy to ask what it was all about. And Hattie stood up and gave a sermon that changed our family's history. She said, I'm tired of talking about lack. I'm tired of talking about fear. I'm tired of talking about the news. She goes, we've got a beautiful home. We're all healthy. We have closets full of clothes. There's enough to go around. She made a declaration of abundance that day that Horn of Plenty stood as a symbol that in this house the Great Depression is over, and she'd hear none of it. Tommy never talked like that again. The next year he took a train to New York City and studied under Napoleon Hill when Napoleon Hill was doing Think and Grow Rich seminars with William Clement Stone, who started a company that traded under the stock ticker PMA for positive mental attitude. And this is where our family direction changed, and this is where Billy began to learn the 7 principles that she taught me. And like I said, these principles changed my life 2 different times, both as a kid and then later as an adult. When I decided I wanted to get back on track and rediscover that senior year magic I had after I'd blown 12 or 13 years of my professional career, when I called her that day, it was about 2 months before I met Mark Cuban and went to work for him. I called her and I said, I want to be that same champion that I was when I was a senior back in 1979. I want that guy back. I've been going sideways. I can do better for my family. She asked me a powerful question. It was this. And if you know anybody that's going sideways right now, just hanging in there, just trying to survive, not growing as a person, ask them this. What are you not doing today that you were doing back in the day when you were on top? And I thought about it. You know, I thought about what we do during times of real abundance. You know, how we probably behaved, say, in 2005 and in 2006. What I saw in the Silicon Valley in the go-go days in 1997 and 1998, that a good PowerPoint presentation made you a millionaire. I remember those times. Or as Cuban used to always tell us, everybody's a genius during a bull market. But when times get ugly and we get afraid, we stop doing all the things that made us successful. And that's really what these 7 principles are about. Now, in this short period of time, I'm just going to talk about 3 principles that I think are all very important, if not to you, maybe to people that work for you, your children, people that you care about. 3 simple principles that I promise will move you forward and give you an intense sense of confidence in how you think you're going to do and how you think the team's going to do. The first thing I've learned, you've got to feed your mind good stuff. That's principle number 1. Now, in the book, there's a bookmark, and on the back of the bookmark, there's the 7 principles. And I got to tell you, feed your mind good stuff is where it all begins. I mentioned before, positive thinking is an outcome. It's not a prescription. You think positive because you put positive stuff into your head. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale in The Power of Positive Thinking, 1953, said that we should be as judicious about what we put into our mind as what we put into our mouth. He didn't even foresee all the diet fads that came later and how picky we'd be. This is before they even had food labeling. Think about how judicious we are today about what we eat. Sugar, fat, carbohydrates, red meat. We think about all these things, don't we? But are we as careful about what we put into our head? When he wrote this in 1953, he never could have anticipated the World Wide Web and Twitter and Facebook and all these other hate generators that exist out there. Our cable television news, either side of the coin, MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News, where they're literally paid to scare you. I can't think of a modern news outlet that's actually judged by being honest and fair and helpful. That's not good news. So my first challenge to you is for either yourself or people that you know, audit your diet. I lost about 45 pounds back in 2003. I had a blood sugar scare. I had to change my diet. The first thing that happened to me was a diet consultant said, write down everything you eat. She swore to me, this is step number one. This will give you a perspective you currently don't have. Doritos, Cheetos, candy. It was amazing how many bad things I was putting into my body. Once I documented it, it really confronted me. I challenge people to do the same thing. I have a buddy named Rick who's really been struggling with depression for the last few years, and he's doing well financially. So I asked him, I audited him a little bit. I said, let's talk about the kind of stuff that you graze on and read. Talk to me about how you get up every morning. What do you do first thing? I wake up, turn off the alarm, turn on the coffee pot, and then I go to my computer, and I click on the email button, and I check my email, right? And I surf around the web, I watch a little cable television news, I listen to Howard Stern on the way to work, I go to work, I get home at night, watch a couple of reality shows. I'm kind of hooked a little bit on this Bravo Housewives thing. I check my email before I go to bed, and then I go to sleep. And like Dr. Phil, I had to ask him, how's that working for you? It is amazing how much negative information is out there for you to put into your head, especially the scare merchants. These are the people that actually convinced 7 out of 10 bank tellers last year in a survey that in November the market was flat to down. That's right, 70% of all bank tellers in a massive survey done by New York Life last year believed in November that the stock market was either even for the year or down. Where did the stock market go last year? What was the number, 28.5%? It was a massive gain year. But if you watch the wrong stuff and you listen to the wrong people, you will always believe the next recession's around the corner. People ask me all the time, what happened to Yahoo? Well, there was a lot of things that happened to Yahoo, but I think the most fundamental thing that happened to Yahoo is that we were still worried about whether the recession was over at the end of 2003. Google, an ex-vendor that started up in 2001, they had a party on Valentine's Day 2002 called The Recession is Over. They cut cable television at the company. They canceled subscriptions for Financial Times and USA Yesterday. That's what they call it, too. It shouldn't be called USA Today. It's USA Yesterday. They created a mastermind group of top financial analysts in one single publication, the Wall Street Journal, one broadcast medium, NPR. And they said nothing else comes into this place because if everybody else is grazing on the same scare merchant media, then we've got 2 years. This is the same time when Steve Jobs said, I'm going to put the iPod out. He did this in March of 2001 against all great advice. They called it Project Waterloo because he says, I guarantee you Sony will not respond and defend the Walkman. Remember the Walkman? Everybody had a Walkman, okay? But Steve Jobs knew that if